Okay, so it's time to start. So, welcome everyone to the last day of CONCUR. It's my pleasure to introduce today's invited speaker, Wojtek Czerwiński. So, Wojtek got his PhD in 2012 here at the University of Warsaw, and he's best known for his spectacular work on the reachability problem in vector addition systems, which is going to be the topic of today's talk. So together with his co-authors, he settled this 40-year open problem, long-standing problem of determining the complexity of the reachability problem in vector addition systems, which has led, to a best paper award at the stock, to publications in Fox and in the Journal of the ACM. And of course, it has culminated with his CONCUR Best Paper Award, this year for his paper 404. This page does not exist. I don't know if you get the joke or not. Some of you should have got it, the ones who were here yesterday. Good. Okay, so it's a pleasure to introduce him, and please, waiting for you to start.
Thank you, Javier, for this nice introduction. Does this work now? Yes. Okay. So I will talk, as you already know, about the reachability problem for vector addition systems, which I abbreviate as VASys. And I decided to talk about this on examples, because I think it's maybe easier to get intuitions by looking at examples. And I would mainly talk about lower bounds, and lower bounds are maybe easier to present by examples. So what's my plan? First, I will give you some basic notions, like what's VAS and what is the reachability problem. Then I will show you a brief history, of course, like from personal perspective. I will not give you the whole history of researching this problem. I will tell you motivation behind, like, why we still should be interested in the problem. Is it not like everything solved? And then I will give you like the real content. So I will give you examples. So essentially speaking, my plan is to show you that there are simple examples of vector addition systems, which are already very non-trivial. They have very non-trivial behavior. So this will be first set of examples, like VASys which have big reachability sets. And then I will show you another set of examples with, let's say, only long paths. And here I will show two techniques on the simplest example which I can. So telescopic equations and then controlling counter, whatever this means at this moment. Okay. So what are vector addition systems? So I will actually present you vector addition systems with states, which I abbreviate as VASys with VASS with two S. This is essentially equivalent in VASys with states. They are, I think, more robust. You can think about them as automata, and that's robust. So what is this? So this is essentially speaking an automaton which has a bunch of counters. Here we have 3 counters and a bunch of transitions. And a transition, what can a transition do? Can modify, decrease or increase the counters. So for example, this transition, it increases the first counter by 2, decreases the second counter by 1, and doesn't change the third counter. Yeah? By the way, I haven't said it. If anything is not clear, please disturb me and ask. I will be happy to take questions in the middle of the talk. Okay, so this is what a transition can do. What is important, we have no zero tests. Yeah, so no transition can be able to be fired if some counter is 0. Okay, this is not a random example. This is an important example coming from the work of Confront Pension from the 70s, early research on VASys. And it will be kind of a starting point of our running example. Okay, so just keep this in mind. It's not a random example. And let's have a look what is a run of a VAS. So let's say we start in such a configuration. Configuration consists of state, here P, and counter evaluations. So let's say we start in here, and we can first apply this blue transition, for example. So it decreases the first counter by 1, and increases the second counter by 1 as well. Yes. So here we go to such a configuration. By the way, colors have no meaning. They are just here to illustrate it. Yeah, but they have no semantics. We can repeat. We can apply this transition second time, and then we go to this configuration. Then, for example, we can take this flag transition. We are here, and here we can apply green transition. So it increases first counter by 2, decreases second counter by 1, and we can repeat this application, and we can now, let's say, fire the red transition. So this is an example run. Okay? So observe maybe for a moment what happens here before going into definition of the problem and so on. So here, applying this twice, we kind of moved values from the first counter to the second counter. Yeah, here was 2, 0, and here we went into 0, 2. And here in this state Q, we kind of transfer back values from the second counter to the first counter, but we multiply it by 2. So from 0, 2, we go to 1, and then 4, 0. This will be a repeating scheme. We can always do it. Aha. So one comment, vector ascension systems and vector addition systems with state, they are essentially speaking equivalent with Petri nets. So if you have heard about Petri nets, then reachability problem for Petri nets is equivalent to reachability problem for vector addition systems. So I'm also speaking about Petri nets, but I prefer to the terminology of VASs. I think I just like talking in these notions. Okay, so let's have a look one more time at this example. Let's imagine we start in such a configuration, P, K0N. Okay. That's good. Okay, so now we can apply K times this transition. Yeah? So after applying this transition K times, we have, instead of K0N, we have 0K. We can apply the black transition. And here we can apply this transition K times. So we have 2K0N. Yeah? And then we apply the red one, so we are here. So we have multiplied here the first counter by 2, but decreased the last counter by 1. Yeah? That's the effect. So if we start in such a transition 1, 0, n, we can keep doing this kind of thing for n times, yes? So we can apply it once, we multiply the first counter by 1, such a run, and so on and so on. And at the end of the day, we are at P 2 power n 0, 0. This is already showing some non-trivial behavior of this example. And notice that actually, if we are here, we can apply this transition many times. So we can apply it 8 times for any a in between 0 or 2 power n, so we can reach such a configuration. So actually, the reachability set, what is a reachability set? Set of all the configurations reachable from this configuration. That's how I define the reachability set. It's of at least exponential size, because here we have exponentially many configurations of this type. And you can pretty easily see that this set is actually also finite. How you can see it? Because the only transition which decreases the last counter is this red one, yes? So here it's 0, here is 0, here is 0. So if you start in this configuration, you can apply the red transition only n times at most. It's an n run. So then if you don't, at some moment you will not have any more this red transition, which is possible. Then you can stay here for only for finite amount of time, because this decreases the first counter, and here you can stay only for finite time because this decreases the second counter. So any run is finite. Yes, you have a bound on the length. So here, just to show you a first non-trivial example that you can get a finite reachability set of exponential size. Maybe exponential is not so impressive, but you will see bigger functions in a moment. Yep, everybody agrees with this example? Okay, so let's go to the definitions. So what is a reachability problem? You are given a VAS, and you are given two its configurations, source S and target T. Okay, and you just ask, is there a run in our VAS from source S to target T? So simple, eh? You also have a related problem, also often considered, which is there a run from So your input is the same, and the question is a bit different. Is there a ramp from S to some configuration T prime, which is above T? So what does it mean to be that T prime is above T? It has the same state, but counters can be a bit higher, yes? No counter can be lower. So we ask this, and this is called a coverability problem. So it's definitely related to reachability. It turns out to be simpler than reachability, and at least as hard as reachability. And in case of vases, it's actually much simpler, as you will see soon. Okay, so now I would like to give you a short history. Disclaimer: it's not the full history. It's like a set of, let's say, milestones in my personal perspective. If you look at the reachability problem, so the first, so people started getting interested in this problem around 70s, and the first milestone was by Lipton in 76. It was X-space hardness of the coverability problem. You can pretty easily see that reachability is harder, at least as hard as coverability. So actually, it's also a lower bound on the complexity of reachability problem. Yes, and there was no upper bound at this moment, no algorithm known. 2 years later, Rakov came with an algorithm which worked in exponential space for coverability. And actually, maybe technique is interesting. It was shown by showing double exponential upper bound of the length of a path. So what I mean, I need 2 hands and the third one for the microphone, but I will try to make it. So imagine you have, so what did he show actually? So the claim was, I will manage.
I can do this if you want.
Okay, no. No. Okay, I will try. Like, so the claim is, if you have a ramp from S to T or above, then the claim was, okay, then you actually also have a ramp from S to T or above of at most double exponential length. Yes, so you have an upper bound on the length of a path, witnessing that it's actually coverable. So if you have double exponential bound, then it's pretty easy to design an algorithm in exponential space. You just remember, yeah, like where you are and how long was the path. So this is a repeating scheme, but actual length of the path is an important somehow insight into vases. So you will see repeating scheme here. Then in 81, Meyer has shown first decidability procedure for the reachability problem. Okay, so only at this point it was known that it's decidable, but no complexity upper bound. And this construction was actually pretty complicated, pretty involved. Both the algorithm was involved, and it was hard to understand it. So then Cosarado and Lambert later they presented, how to say, simplifications, maybe adaptations of this approach, but actually the kind of core of this algorithm is the same, in my opinion. So this approach is called now KLM decomposition after the names of this Cosarado, Lambert, Meyer. But there was still no upper bound at this point. And okay, so here you can see a big gap in years, and people were working on vases at this point, but no big progress on complexity of vases was there, so that's why I don't mention it. So now I jump, say, to recent years. So in 2015, Blondin and his co-authors have considered, so here I denote this, that's for two-dimensional vases. Okay, so vases with two counters. Okay, that's how I denote two-dimensional vases. So they have shown that reachability problem for two-dimensional vases is actually p-space complete. So in particular, they have shown that the algorithm is in p-space, and they also just have proven exponential bound on the length of a path. So they have shown if there is a path from S to T, there is a path from S to T of at most exponential length. That's how the p-space algorithm was proven. Okay, so what's further? So in 2015, Jerome Leroux and Sylvain Schmitt, they have shown first complexity upper bound on the algorithm. It was cubic Ackermann. I will not tell you what is cubic Ackermann. This is some huge complexity which is higher than Ackermann. You will see what is Ackermann in, maybe you know, but I will define Ackermann. But this is just exotically huge. 4 years later, they have improved on this, and they have lowered the complexity upper bound to Ackermann. You can see that green is upper bound, red is lower bound in my slides. And at this point, I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think that many people were thinking that actually the reachability problem should be in exponential space. I was slightly thinking like that, or maybe that this is a possibility. Why? Because first of all, well, I think many people conjectured that actually there is so for the coverability problem, you have this double exponential length upper bound, yes? And I think that, at least I was hoping as well, that if you have a round from S to T, then also you have a short round from S to T, like double exponential. And this would give exponential space, and probably there was like a thought that, well, it's probably like for coverability, but we are still not smart enough to prove this. And we were pretty surprised also by ourselves when we have managed with co-authors to prove in 2019 that the problem is actually tower hard. What is a tower? It's a complexity class of problems, roughly speaking, solvable in time 2 power 2 power 2 power 2 power 2 power 2, and the height of this tower is n. It's like proportional to the size of the input. And so this is a tower of exponentials. Okay, so that was a big progress with respect to Lipton previous lower bound, but then there was still a gap between Ackermann and tower, and maybe you, if you are not into the field, you can say, well, who cares? Tower or Ackermann? But I hope I will convince you that this somehow, yeah, that there is a difference. And yeah, so recently we have managed, actually, by two teams independently, Jerome Leroux, and independently we have proven with Łukasz Olikowski, that the problem is actually Ackermann hard. So now you can see that it's known the problem is Ackermann complete. So that's the story. Okay, so now I will give you maybe more details. Okay, so what's the last? Yeah, okay. So now in next two slides, I will tell you what more precisely what we have proven. And then I will give you examples which I hope you will give you some intuition on like what are the techniques we have used. I will not prove it, I don't have time. But actually, if I would have 2 hours, I would be able to prove it. It's not extremely complicated. Okay, so what are functions fk? Functions fk, fast grow. This is a hierarchy of fast growing functions. This is what f stands for. So first, function f1 is just doubling, yeah? f1 of n is 2n. And if you have function fk, you can define function fk plus 1. So fk plus 1 of n is, you apply fk n times, this is composed n times, to value 1. So let's have a look, what is f2 now? f2 of n is just to compose n times doubling, and you apply it to 1. So if you take 1 and double it n times, you have 2 power n. So what is f3? You take 1 and you apply the power function, 2 power n times. So you have 2 power 2 power 2 power 2 power 2 n times. So you have, this is what we call a tower function, tower of exponentials of theta. So you can see f4 is applying n times towering, so this is something crazy, and this is really fast growing. Yeah? And based on that, you will define Ackermann function. So if you want to define Ackermann function of n, It's also denoted F omega. You can somehow phrase it in this hierarchy also, but you apply the n function Fn to n. So you may have seen this hierarchy of functions, and you may say, well, I have seen a different definition. So definitions slightly vary, but yeah, they are similar with respect to the growth. So this is how we define Ackermann function, and based on Ackermann function, you can define Ackermann complexity class of problems which are roughly speaking solved in that time. Similarly, with each Fn, for example, complexity class tower by this Bessel tower. So what we actually have proven in this Ackermann hardness is that the reachability problem in dimension. Okay, so this is what I show you Jérôme's best result. The reachability problem for dimension 2k plus 4 is fk hard. This is what Jérôme Leroux have proven in his recent version, so he keeps improving the dimensions. So if you know that the reachability problem is there in this dimension is fk hard, it's clear that you cannot solve reachability problem in nfk class, because for some dimension it's fk plus 1 hard, yes? So this is like, this means it's Ackermann hard.
I would just say technicality with respect to which kind of reductions?
Okay, I would have to think what do you mean?
Well, I mean, is polynomial, exponential, or what is the...
What are the reductions?
Something, an arbitrary, elementary function.
I mean, you can allow any reductions which are below fk. What he's shown, I'm not sure. I think we have used some smaller reductions, probably polynomial reductions.
So even polynomial.
I would think so.
Okay.
I haven't thought about this. I mean, it's kind of, yeah. So what we have done in our original work, there was a dimension 6k. And maybe one important notice is here, like the current quest is, so here you have fk hardness in dimension 2k plus something, plus constant. So the question is, can you do it in dimension k plus constant? It's known that you cannot go small, like lower. So this is like maybe inside question, but this is a current question. Okay, so yeah, so you can ask, okay, is everything solved then? And so the guys have shown Ackermann completeness. Why do we bother at all about this? So I would like to convince you that this is not the case, but we still, in my opinion, we lack a lot of understanding, not only about buses, but about reachability problem on buses. And I would like to give you like three arguments about this. So first of all, what if you look at the reachability problem for three-dimensional buses? I have told you that for two-dimensional, you know it's p-space complete. But what about dimension 3? So of course it's p-space hard, because 3 is bigger than 2. But what is the best algorithm? The best algorithm we know is on this level F7, which I have shown you. So this is like over tower. So we don't know, maybe it's p-space complete, maybe it's tower complete, maybe it's, we don't know whether it's elementary, and this is striking for me. I think this is very interesting. For such low dimension, we still have a totally lack the knowledge. And I keep working on it, but it's hard. But I recommend this. Another question which I think is very interesting is, what about reachability problem for fixed bus? Georg Zechel was asking this question. So in the reachability problem, your input is bus and two configurations, source and target. So you can say you fix a bus and the input is just source and target. So of course, when reachability equation, it for some buses maybe trivial. Yeah, if your bus has no transitions, then it's trivial. But for some buses, it may be complicated. So the question is how complicated it can get for some buses. And at the beginning, we thought, well, probably it's also Ackermann hard. We just have to modify our proof, but it didn't work. And after some time of thinking about this with Ismail Yeager as well, we have a conjecture, but actually in p-space. So we have a conjecture that if you have a run from source S to target T, then there is always a run of length proportional to the size of S plus size of T. But it's some conjecture. So the question is it maybe Ackermann-Hart? Or maybe it's in p-space? You see, like we are totally lost. I think this is a very interesting question. So it was solved by Jérôme Leroux in some subcase of buses, reversible buses, but in general, it's not. No. We also have a lot of extensions of buses. Push-down buses, branching buses, data buses, and reachability problem is not known to be decidable there, but actually I think conjectured by most of the people to be decided. So here you can see we are still lost. There is, I think, a lot of things hidden there, so it's still worth to work on it. Let me have a look at. I don't know, maybe I go slower than I expected. Yes. Okay, so now I will show you hard examples. So now I will show you some examples of buses which are pretty simple, but they have very big reachability set. So this is the example which I have shown you before. Here I have there is no labels here, but by this I mean this transition doesn't change counters. Okay. So let's have another copy of this, and let's have another state here, state R. Let's add two transitions here. So let's have a look what can be done with this bus with 5 states. If we start here in P0n, as before, we can keep running like this, and we can reach P to power n00. This is the run which I have shown you like a quarter ago, and then go to Q, and you have Q to power n00. Yes. So then you can go to this state. No change. And you can keep repeating this loop. So you transfer things from first counter to the last counter. Yes. And now you jump here. So you are in P prime 1, 0 to power n. And you see that this part is the same as this part. So you can do the same as above, but now you don't loop here n times, you loop here to power n times. So you can go to this state. Yes. And here, if you are here, you can keep doing this loop for any number in between 0 and 2 power n. So here you can see you have a finite double exponential reachability set. You can see it's finite pretty easily, similarly as before. So it's a very easy example of double exponential size of a set. This is already something interesting, but you will see a very simple example, even going much higher. Let's take our favorite example, but now you see we have 4 counters. So I have added the 4th counter, but at the moment it does nothing. Here it has 0 effect, here 0 effect, here 0 effect, and here 0 effect. So I just have this 4th counter, it will be used somewhere else. And I add just one state, the same as before. You transfer value here from first to the 3rd counter, and the last counter has 0 effect. And here I have just one transition which adds here 1 and subtracts 1 in the 4th counter. So this is the only thing which happens on the 4th counter. It's subtracted in here. Yes? So what may happen if you start from 1, 0, 1, n? So you can do what, in this upper part, you can go into, okay. So this is a bit of abbreviation. I will show you how to do it. From 1, 0, 1 on the upper part, you can go to 2 power 1, 0, 0, then go here, and you have 2 power 1, 0, 0 on these first 3 counters. So you transfer value from first to the 3rd counter. So you have 0, 0 to power 1, and then you go back here. So you have 1, 0 to power 1. Yes, on first 3 counters. Do you agree? You can just exponentiate this counter, and you decrease the last counter by 1. So you can keep doing this n times. So you can exponentiate your fair counter n times. So you can actually get tower of n. And you can pretty easily see that reachability set of reachable configurations from here is finite, because this transition can be only finite many times. So after disabling this, you can only stay here for a finite amount of time and then stay here also for a finite amount of time. And so how did we do it? We just composed the exponentiating function n times. So you can similarly add one more counter and do the f4. So tower is f3, yes? You can do f4. So in dimension 4, you can do f3 in general. Okay, so here you have finite tower size reachability set, but in dimension d plus 1, you can have finite fd size reachability set. So you see, it's very easy. And you have very complicated behavior. So here you already can see why VASs have something to do with a permanent function. I hope this gives you intuition. This was known long time ago. Okay, that's not our invention. The point is that this is still, this is a witness. We have complicated behaviors. Something is getting weird. But still, you are not forced by any way to take this. So here from this 101n, you can keep going around and you can reach 1010, yeah? You don't have to use these loops fully. We need something more. So we need something which I call, just want to stop, enforcing. So we need a way of enforcing your loops to be performed maximally. And this is line of research we started like 5-6 years ago. We managed to design techniques which allow for enforcing, let's say, the loops to go to enforcing the run to follow some concrete path. And based on that, you can get hardware results. I think this is high-level intuition. I will have a look how much time is that. Okay, I still have 15 minutes. I hope this will be enough. So, okay, so I have shown you that in some dimensions we have FD hardness, yes? So if you have FD hardness in some dimension, let's say 6D, this implies you have no, it's not true, I will state something which is not true. It's not true that for each VAS and for each source and target, you always, if you have a run, you have a run which has tower length. This cannot be true, because if this would be true, then you would have a tower algorithm, yes? You just look for all tower length paths and you check. So you have no tower upper bound on the length of a path, okay, from source to target. And similarly, you have no FD upper bound for any D. So you should have examples which have extremely long shortest paths in between the source and target. So this is like the challenge to design VASs in which you have runs, but they're extremely long. And yeah, so that's, and here you see that it's not precise, but I think there is a strong connection between complexity and like length of the shortest runs from source to target. You have seen that there were many algorithms in the history designed by proving upper bound on the lengths. But also, if you have an example with only long paths, you're very, very close to getting hardness. In my personal opinion, I don't know, maybe others can disagree, but that's my opinion. So now I want to tell you the examples which I have shown you. They have very big reachability set, but this is not sufficient for long runs, because look at this example. You have, this is what I told you a moment ago. So you have this run, but you may also skip all the transitions. You go follow this path, this path, this path, and you can reach 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. Nothing forces you to take these loops. So this is a problem. We need enforcing techniques. And how I do it, I will show you this on small dimensions, actually in dimension 3. I will show you two examples for two techniques which allows us some enforcing. I will not show you how to enforce FD long runs, but I will show you how to enforce exponential length runs. And the focus is on techniques. Now, and this is also what I think is important. So our experience, at least in case of buses, teaches us that looking at small dimensions is often fruitful because it's easier to design techniques there. And at least in our Ackermann case of our Ackermann hardness, we first looked, our goal was to solve small dimension, and then we have designed a technique which we realized it allows us for Ackermann hardness. Okay, so first technique, this is telescopic equations. So first, let's have a look at this bus. So here we have two states. Some part of bus, let's say. Here, the loop, it transfers value from first counter to the second counter. And here, this loop, it transfers it back, but multiplies it. Yes. So for each decrease of b on the second counter, you increase it the first counter by a. So you kind of multiply by a over b if you fully apply this loop. Yes. So if you start from some n0 valuation, you can go to 0n, and you can go to something, this is an abbreviation, you can, at first counter, you can reach at most n times a over b fraction. Yeah, can you see it? And you actually can reach it if you apply this loop fully, and then this loop fully, and n was divisible by b. But if and only if this. If n was not divisible by b, you cannot reach n times a over b. So that's a simple gadget. So now our construction will be based on this telescopic equation. You just multiply all the fraction, k divided by k minus 1, k minus 1 divided by k minus 2, and so on, 3 over 2, 2 over 1, such that a lot cancels out, and the rest is k over 1. It's okay. So this is yeah. So how our VAS looks like? It has 3 counters. These gadgets will be applied to the second and third counter. So in first state, you just increase first and second counter. Then, okay, so here I call it a mult gadget of fraction a over b. So here next I jump into such gadget which works on second and third counter, yeah, because this gadget works on 2 counters. And it multiplies, it is this gadget with k and k minus 1. Here we have a sequence of these gadgets with fractions like here. And here we have gadget for fraction 3 over 2, 2 over 1. And then finally you go into such a state in which you decrease first and second counter, but the second counter is decreased by k. Okay? So now, let's have a look at the second slide, and this is the same bus. Let's have a look what is, let's assume we consider runs from S and counter value 0, 0, 0 to state T and counter value 0, 0, 0 as well, zeros everywhere. So how such a run can look like? So first you apply this transition some n number of times. So you have n and 0 here. And if you apply this fully, you may have such a configuration. So first counter is not touched, and second counter may be multiplied by k divided by k minus 1, or is smaller. Yes? Then if you apply this fully, then the first counter is multiplied by k minus 1 divided by k minus 2, so it can be at most nk divided by k minus 2. If everything is applied fully. And so on and so on. Here, the second counter can be at most this n times this fraction times this fraction times this fraction, which is nk divided by 2. And here it's at most nk. And actually, observe that we need it to be exactly nk in order to reach 0, 0, 0. Because here, for each decrease on first counter, you decrease the second counter by k. You need second counter to be big. So I claim now, I don't prove it precisely, but I hope you can see it, that in order to reach this and nk0, you need to fully apply all the loops inside. And because of that, it means that nk should be divisible by k minus 1, k minus 2, k minus 3, and so on. So nk should be divisible by each of these numbers, so by its lowest common multiplier, which turns out to be exponential. It's number theory theorem. So nk should be exponential, so actually k should be exponential. So each round from S000 to T000 is of this exponential. So this is, you can see, simple example, but we have a way of forcing a run to take everything, which it should do. So this, we have applied these telescopic equations in our settings. So for example, we have an example of 4-dimensional vase in which the shortest run is double exponential. In dimension 3, we don't know about something like that. Maybe always a run is at most exponential. Also in our tower hardness paper, the telescopic equations were there. Actually, I think exactly this telescopic equation. So not very complicated. It was used there together with other technique, which is called multiplication triples, which I will not show you here. I don't have time for it, but I wrote a short paper about this talk. So you can find multiplication triple technique there. Okay, so now the second technique. Okay, I have 7 minutes. I have 17 minutes probably. So before I introduce this technique of controlling counters, I will introduce something which is called counter programs, which is another way of presenting vases. So let's have a look at our vase, which we have here. We can present it by boxes, arrows, circles, but we also can present it differently as a code. It's often convenient for vases. So what happens? So assume we have 3 counters, and we call it x, y, z. So what happens here is in a loop, you increase first counter and second counter. X plus 1, y plus 1. Okay? I hope it's clear. And here what you do, you apply k minus 1 gadgets, and in each gadget is like I divided by I minus 1. So here for I from k down to 2, you do, what do you do? You have 2 loops in each such gadget. From counter 2, you can decrease counter 2 by 1 and you increase counter 3 by 1, and then you loop back. I hope you remember the picture here of the gadget. So this is exactly what happens in this gadget. And then in the last state, what you do, you loop, decreasing first counter and decreasing second counter by k. So this is just an illustration. Here I just want to introduce this notation based on this example. I hope it's clear. Any questions? So this is very convenient for vases, which work sequentially, and we often do it to describe briefly vases. So now I will introduce the last technique, which I want to present today. So the controlling counter technique. To introduce one counter, which kind of enforces your whole run to be exact, to fully apply loops. So let's look at simple scenarios. So imagine you have some counter x, and you want to zero test in just in 3 places. 3 places along your run. So let's assume that you have a run and you have some configurations, C1, C2, C3. And counter values of this counter x are x1, x2, x3 in this configuration. So we want to check whether all of them are 0. So it's clearly enough to check whether the sum of these 3 numbers is 0. Yes, because you know they are non-negative. So what can happen back, they can be positive. So it's enough to check the sum. So let's assume for simplicity that our run started in some C0 and counter value of x was 0. That's just for simplicity. And let's denote by y1 the effect of this run on on counter x, y1 to effect of this round on counter x, and here y3. Okay. So what do we have? x1 is just y1, yeah? x2 is after effect y1 and after effect y2, so x2 is y1 plus y2, and x3 is sum of these three y's, y1 plus y2 plus y3, yeah? So in order to check whether this sum, so maybe one remark, so what would be the most convenient would be to keep one counter which computes this value x1 plus x2 plus x3, and at the end of a run, just check whether it's zero. I mean, your demand is to reach zero value. And this is exactly what we do, but it's not entirely trivial how to keep this value of three counters because, let's say not of three counters, but of three moments of the same counter. You know, if you think a bit about this, is how do you realize it? You cannot. So here I show you how to realize it. So actually, you have to compute this value. 3 times y1, x1 plus x2 plus x3 is this, yeah? So you need to check whether this is 0. So how do you realize it? Okay, so you create, as I told you, a new counter called C, which counts this, and how it counts it? Maybe I have it. Sorry. So how do you do it? So you need to on counter C should count 3 times this effect. So each time counter X is getting increased on this run, counter C should be increased by 3. Each time counter X is decreased by 1 on this part, counter C should be decreased by 3. In this way, after this run, counter C will have value 3 times y1. Yes? It just copies the moves of X on this part, but multiplied by 3. Then something changes in here, and now counter C copies counter X on this part, but multiplies everything by 2. Yeah? And then here it changes its behavior and copies counter X multiplied by 1, and then after here it stays the same. Yeah, everybody agrees? Okay, so that's the way how you can do it, and you can do it with 3 testing places, but of course also with 7 testing places, so 1 million, and also something about constants, yes? And what you can do, so you can have many testing places and also for many counters. So you may have one controlling counter C, and this counter counts just the sum of all the 0 tested counters, all the places in which counters should be 0 tested. And how do we exactly realize it? So counter C controls a bunch of counters, let's say X, Y, Z. And if it controls counter X, if X waits for K0 test, what do I mean by this? If we have a counter X and in a future of counter X, there is still K0 test to be applied, what does it mean? It means that each increment of counter X should be simulated by counter C by increment by K. Simply. As simply as that, yeah? And similarly for other counters. So if in some transitions, counter X is increased by 1 and counter Y is decreased by 1, the effect of counter C should be, sum of this effect plus sum of the other effect on Y. So here I have an example. So let's first consider a simple example. So you do something K times. What do? You have 2 counters. In first loop, you decrease the first counter and you increase the second counter by 2. So you transfer value from first counter to the second one, but on a way you multiply it by 2. You may multiply it by 2. You are not forced. Yeah? And then second loop allows for transferring back value from second counter to the first one. So if you start from 1, 0, if you do everything fully, you get what? you can k times multiply first counter by 2, so you can get 2 power k 0. Yes? But you are not forced to do any of these operations, so the problem is you can actually get also 1, 0, yes? So how to force our counter program, our VAS, to go this way? So we add another counter. So here I copy this program, but I phrase it a bit differently. So here you can see I run from 1 to k, and here I run it down from k down to 1. Yeah, just a way of presenting it. It will be a bit more convenient to phrase it like that. So I copy this program. It's still k times done this. And now let's have a look. What do we need to assure in order to be sure we go this way? So we need to assure that after this loop, counter x is actually 0. Yeah? But this loop was fully performed. And after this loop, y should be 0. So at this program, we need in each iteration to have 0 tests of x here and 0 tests of y here. So we have k0 tests on these lines and k on x in this line and k0 tests on y in this line. Yes? So what should we add? So we add a controlling counter here. So what should we add? So I claim we should add c plus, we should increase c by I. Why? Because in this line, if we have iteration I, counter x is still waiting for I0 tests. And counter y is also waiting for I0 tests. You know, for the iterations which are still ahead. So because of this counter, we should decrease the counter c by I, and because of this, we should increase it by 2i. So 2i minus I, this is how we get this. Any questions at this point? And here, what should be the effect? Counter x, it was just here tested, so it's waiting now for I minus 1 0 tests. And this counter is waiting for I0 tests. So the effect on C should be plus I minus 1 minus I. So it should be just decreased by 1. So this is how it works on this example. And here I claim that if you start from 1 0 0, you can reach only 2 power k 0 0 under the condition that the c is actually 0. So I should maybe write 2 power k 0 c if c is 0. So this is a way of enforcing taking all the loops. And of course, this is just a baby example. So this technique was used in our carbon hardness proof with Łukasz. And we also, so as I told you, we believe it's worth to look at small examples to solve at small dimensions to design new techniques. So we look at small dimensions, and in a bunch of our small dimensions results, this technique was also used. And yeah, so we used it here together with one more time with this technique of multiplication triples. What's interesting is that it's somehow incomparable with multiplication triples technique. So they need to go together. Okay, my last slide. Okay, it's not bad. What's my message? I have 3 messages. So first of all, we still have many open problems for buses. So it's worth to think further. Second message is that we think it's worth to look at small dimensions in order to design techniques. And the more technical message is like that. If you want to get hardness, I mean, this is approximate, yeah, but if you want to get hardness, you need to do 2 things. First of all, you need to have some way of getting long runs. This is what I have shown you on big reachability set. And I think that this may also apply, some kind of this, maybe modification of this may also apply not only to buses, but maybe to our systems. Yeah, that's my point. I hope also maybe these techniques may apply to our systems. So you maybe should be able to get some long runs, and then you should have techniques which enforce these runs, to be exact. So maybe something like that. So that's my last message. That's it. Thank you very much.
So,
thank you. So it's perhaps not surprising that your hardness results are based on zero tests, right? And then somehow introducing zero tests back into RAS, right? Is this a way to phrase it, right? Because essentially what you are doing when you check for reachability is you check for counter equality at the end. So you can check for zero tests, you can have a zero test at the end, right? And you are you have some way of pulling back those zero tests into your VAS, right? So why is this still decidable?
Yeah, so that's a very good way of phrasing it. So we have, for reachability, we have a single zero test. So our techniques, roughly speaking, they boost the zero test into many zero tests, but we still, even if, with our techniques, we have a bounded number of zero tests. We can simulate, only some bounded number of zero tests, maybe linear, maybe Ackermann, maybe up to Ackermann, but we don't have zero tests for free, and this is the reason why it's decided.
Okay, so there is another result there that reachability for buses with a bounded number of zero tests is decided.
Yeah, I mean, this can be reduced rather easily, I think, to just reachability without zero testing, just list them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
other questions? Yeah, great talk. Thanks a lot. So you showed two kind of techniques for forcing, this multiplication technique and this zero. Well, at least two.
We have even more. Yeah, we have.
Sure. But so do you also have results which require, because they seem very different, right? One is about multiplication and you're really doing this LCM exponential lower bound, and the other one is somehow distributing the zero tests. Do you have ways to combine this, and would that result in even more stronger techniques, or are they inherently different?
It's a good question. We still don't really understand. So we recently worked on low dimensions with Łukasz, and we have like 4 different results, and we have these 3 techniques, these 2 and multiplication triples, and we combine them in very different ways. Like each 2 somehow sometimes work together, but we don't understand why we need 3. We don't understand how do they compare with each other. This is maybe more ad hoc things. Maybe there is some ultimate technique which is stronger than all of them. I don't know. Is it? Do I answer the question?
It was imposed.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah. So this might be a probably stupid question, but so in some sense, I mean, in VASs we say that they're like counter systems without zero tests, right? But if once a particular counter which is 0, or a particular variable which is 0, we don't take a 0, I mean a negative transition from there, right? I mean the losses cannot go beyond. But do these hardness results follow if we allow such transitions, right? And allow basically taking -1 transition but not decrementing it stays 0. So even if you take that
you asked whether these hardness results still hold in the case if you want.
Not the hardness, but can we say something about the read sets of such kind of?
So are we? I'm not sure. So are we talking about so-called integer VASs when counters can go below 0, or
no, they can't go below 0, but they can take transitions but not change if they are.
I think it's gain errors. Something like you can spontaneously increment your counter in order to be able to perform some transitions one more time. Even like.
I see.
So you're saying you cannot decrease the low, but then you keep it 0.
Yeah. So read sets.
This is what you
But I mean, if you take lossy VASs, they will have some extra spurious, beat set because you have, it's become lossy. It's like lossy only in that particular transition.
I'm not sure. I would guess this is probably easier. Anybody know that?
I think so, yeah. I don't know, I think so.
It's probably easier because you have
It becomes well.
it's a bit like you allow this counter to go to grow. So you have much less kind of structure.
Yeah, but I mean, lossy VAS would, correct me if I'm wrong, lossy VAS would be like if I take a transition, any transition, right? There could be losses in any transition, right? Here the losses is only, basically there are particular kind of loss. I mean, whenever your counter value is 0, and you are taking a negative transition, you're allowed to take it, but they are not going below 0.
It's a good question, and maybe we should think
I mean, it's like
during your break or
Right. That's a question.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the first and the last question. I'm going to be fast. So Jérôme, it might also be an inappropriate question. Does he have other techniques than the 3 you presented here? For showing his results?
Techniques are similar, but also different in a way. So, for example, he designed this multiplication triple technique. So this is not like we are competitors. We sometimes work together. So in this Ackermann hardness, he had a different technique. I don't know how to name it. So he designed a complicated VAS in a different way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think that's it. So let's thank the speaker again.